Hi everyone, today's tutorial is going to be on Deployment Manager. Deployment Manager is infrastructure as a code tool for Google Cloud. For those who are not familiar with this term infrastructure as a code, it simply means you're building up infrastructure using code. So you write a code or script to create, manage and provision resources. Your work is just to write the code, rest everything is done by Google itself. Next question that comes to our mind is why infrastructure as a code? Why not just infrastructure as service? Well, imagine when you have to work on a large scale and there are large number of resources that need to be created. Can you imagine how much time consuming that would be just clicking places and creating resources one by one? So why not just write a code and automate the process? Let me use an example so it becomes easier for you to understand. Suppose you have 100 instances that need to be spun up every morning at 9 and stopped by the end of the day. What would you prefer? To click and create each one of them, or to just use a code that would do everything for you? You'd obviously want to use the code, right? And this is when deployment management comes in picture. You can write your code using templates and configuration file. Templates are written in Jinja 2 or Python. A configuration file defines the resources that you're creating and are written in YAML syntax. If you're building a complex infrastructure with many resources, you can create templates and then import them in your configuration file. In this tutorial, we'll create a simple VM machine and a firewall rule. So this is the code that I'm going to be using. We are going to create one instance and a firewall rule. So these are all the properties of the instance. The instance we are going to create will be instance 1. If you want to make changes, you can make changes here to the name. The zone that we are going to create the instance in is US East 1C. The machine type is F1 micro. The image that we are using is Debian 9. We are going to give the tag of HTTP server to our instance. Network interface we are going to use default. We mention access config to get external IP address of our instance. Next we are going to create a firewall rule which will be called custom allow HTTP. Target tags will be HTTP server. When I say target tags, that means this firewall rule will only be associated with those instances which has a target tag of HTTP server. That is why I gave this tag to my instance so that my firewall rule can be associated with this instance only. The IP protocol we're using is TCP and the port is 80. Before we move further, I just want to tell you this thing that we need to put our project ID here on in machine type where it says your project. We need to delete this and write our project ID. Next, we need to make changes here in network. Here again we need to delete this text where it says your project ID and enter in our project ID. To start working with Deployment Manager, we need to enable the API, and to enable the API, we need to go to Google Cloud Platform. To enable the API, we'll write Deployment Manager in the search field. Click on Cloud Deployment Manager V2 API. The API is already enabled for me, but you need to click on Enable API on your screen. Once you have enabled the API, we'll move to Deployment Manager. To go to Deployment Manager, we'll click on the navigation menu, scroll down to Deployment Manager and click on it. This is what your screen will look like. We'll launch our shell, cloud shell, and then we'll click on this pencil icon. When your cloud shell gets activated and ready to work with, make sure you're in the project that you're working. If this is not what your screen looks like with your project ID written on your screen terminal, then you will have to use this command: gcloud config set project and then your project ID. But my project is already selected, so I'm not going to enter this command. To work with the script we saw, we need to enter this command git clone and then this path. I'll mention this path in the description. This is the path of my repo that I'm using. You can use the same, and the script we saw exists here. So the repo has been cloned to our Cloud Shell. Next, we need to move where our code exists. So to see where we are right now, we'll just type pwd present working directory. So we are right now in home Khushbu 96, and we need to move to GCP tutorials. To change the directory, we use the command cd and then the name of the directory we want to move in. So GCP tutorials, and then to see the contents of this folder, we'll just do ls. Here we go. This is where our script is. So this is perfectly fine. I'm just going to clear all the commands. I'll open the file so that I can see the contents of my file and make necessary changes. So I told you we need to make changes here. I already have an instance called instance 1, so I'm going to name it as instance 2. This is where I'll put in the project ID. So my project ID is test project 267910. I'm just going to copy this and paste it there. I'm going to do the same thing here. Once everything is done, you're ready to move ahead. So the command that you need to give now, if you remember last time I told you a little trick, that was to start with gcloud, enter the service you're working with, so deployment manager. Then we are doing deployments, so deployments, and then the action we are doing, we are creating it, so create, and then the name of the deployment, I'll just give it name of deployment 1, and then we'll use the config flag when we are using configuration file. So the name of the configuration file is simple vm.yaml, and then we are going to press enter. So the creation is in progress. And the deployment is created successfully, is completed successfully. We'll verify it by going on the deployment page. Here we go. This was the deployment we created. So I created instance 2, and these are the properties we created with, and I created a firewall rule. These are the properties I created with. Next, we are going to go on compute engine page so that we can see the instance we created. Here we go. This was the instance we created using deployment manager. The firewall rule, This is the firewall rule we created, custom allow HTTP. That's all for today. I hope this tutorial was helpful. See you till next time. Next time we are going to do little modifications and going to build a little more complex infrastructure, but using templates, using Jinja templates. So next time we are going to create a VPC, 2 instances, and we are also going to put metadata startup scripts in our instance using deployment manager. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. See you till next time.